Right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our data pipelines with FME. My name is Kieran Kirk. I'm the Operations Director with Data Builders and IMGS. With me today is Gavin Park, who is our Lead Solutions Consultant. Hi, Gavin.
I am.
All right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people just coming on, so we're just going to kick off now and get started. I think there's a good few people on the already joined. So this morning we're going to talk about data pipelines with FME. So I'm going to give you an overview, introduction to what we're doing, and then Gavin's going to show you some demonstrations of rapidly ingesting data with FME into things like Snowflake, and then I'll finish off by showing you how we can very quickly visualize and analyze that data in Sisense. So what we're seeing is the path to becoming a data-driven organization. Over the last few years, the first thing that happened was people were able to map process and technology. So that was the first innovation in IT, was to try and provide IT systems and processes that map what people do. The next step, and what we've seen in the last few years, is data democratization, where we're sharing data and making it available to more and more people. And that has been ongoing, and we have a lot of existing FME customers, and that's something we've been doing for the last 20 odd years, getting data, sharing it out, and making it available via whether it's web portals, whether it's download services, whether it's getting it into central data warehouses, making it that more and more people can access that information. And that's something that we've been doing for years, and you as organizations have all been doing. And in the last couple of years, people talk about moving from the digitization process at the start to now digital transformation, where you're actually taking existing digital systems and trying to improve them and trying to make them more better, trying to make that they've got a better return on what you're trying to do. So the people process worked well. We've seen that over the last few years. As I've mentioned, so is data democratization. We're all now able to see access. There's such an explosion of data. We can all get access to it. But when it comes to digital transformation, what we've seen is 90% of digital transformation strategies modernize as opposed to transform. So that could be, you're going from SQL Server 2012 to SQL Server 2019. That's not really transformation, that's just an upgrade. So what we're trying to see now with our organizations is customers who are really using data to change how they do the business, to transform how they're doing their business. But there's an awful lot of challenges when you're trying to do real transformation. We're hitting a lot of challenges in that area. So whether that's, now we're seeing post-COVID, cross teams in different areas working remotely, we see still an awful lot of manual and inefficient processes. And it's amazing, even in today's world, the amount of paper or digital paper-based kind of forms that are very cumbersome, very manual. The amount of people who still got data silos, many people are still using things in Excel. Excel is just used so extensively. We're now seeing as well challenges with how people are bigger demands from customers, bigger demands from citizens. Post-pandemic, that is driving a move to the cloud. Remote access 24/7, that is really important. So having on-premise systems were really showing up during the pandemic. And again, we've seen it over the last few years, very limited resources in IT. And even in Ireland, I know we are seeing, I see Google announced some more job closures this morning, but there's still a massive shortage of IT people in the industry, and this is driving change as well. Still, having to be able to connect to enterprise systems and then being able to provide timely access or real-time access to data, to quality data, these are big challenges. There's still a lot of systems are providing data 24 hours or 7 days out of date because of the time it takes to bring all this information together and the time it takes to wrangle this data to get it in. We're also seeing huge change now in data variety, volume, and any interoperability. One of the things Gavin's going to show this morning is how we can handle semi-structured data. So the days of relational databases in a nice structured way are coming to an end. There's more and more information in more and more formats and in huge size. This morning, we want to really talk about two areas of those challenges and how we can address them with FME. First off, it's how we can provide timely, and real-time access to quality data. So how do you get the data to where you need it for your insight into your data warehouse in time to use it? So you're not spending days wrangling or manipulating data. Secondly, we also show how, if you've got a modern platform, a modern data warehouse, how do you get the data from your legacy systems into that modern data warehouse, whether it's a cloud data warehouse like Snowflake or Redshift. And again, part of that is also moving that these legacy enterprise systems could be on-premise, could be behind firewalls, and could be contained in multiple silos. So getting that data out in a timely manner so that you can deliver fast insight is one of the big pushes for true digital transformation. The 4 steps we want to have to improve time to insight. As I mentioned, we want to cut down the time spent wrangling data via simple data pipelines. You need to have a true single true data source through your cloud data warehouse. You want to be able then to be able to complete data preparation and transformation at scale from within the data warehouse. Because when you are talking about hundreds of millions or billions of rows of records, you have to be able to do that manipulation, taking advantage of something like Snowflake or Redshift and doing it at that level, or Databricks. And then what you want is that your visualization or your BI tool can mash up and visualize data instantly from the cloud data warehouse to deliver rapid insights. So these are the principles we think you need to have when you're looking at a data pipeline solution. So that means the requirements that you need from your data pipeline is one is broad connectivity. You want to be able to connect to data anywhere, whether it's on the premise or in the cloud. Secondly, you need automation. You can't have manual intervention in these processes. You need to be able to provide automatic updates based on real-world events. And thirdly, and we can't forget, when we are trying to improve access to data, to improve use of data, we can't leave behind governance. We need to make sure that data is secure. We need to make sure that the integrity of data is maintained at all times. And even as a company, we've now seen over the last couple of years, bigger onus on us as a software and a data processor to make sure that we're GDPR compliant, to make sure that we're ensuring the integrity of data at all times. And as you as customers, you're actually going to see more and more of that push on you, because we've seen, I think it's Meta and Facebook have had massive fines this year where for breaches and things like this. So again, the integrity and governance, whatever you're doing from a data pipelining point of view, is really, really important. So this is where we introduce our data intelligence platform. So with Safe Software FME, we have the data pipeline platform, with data integration platform, where we can ensure delivering healthy, secure, governed data. Snowflake is our preferred data warehouse of choice, and we're going to show you that this morning and how we can ingest data into it rapidly. And then our market-leading analytics platform is Sisense. And again, I'm going to, as I always try and do in these webinars, I'm going to tie in a bit of Sisense at the end, just to show you how quick and easy we can actually make pretty pictures of what Gavin's going to do with the data pipelines. So from an FME point of view, how does it meet the data pipeline requirements we talked about a second ago? Well, firstly, it allows us to connect to over 450 different systems. So everything from on-premise databases, legacy databases, SQL Server, Access, whatever it is you got, Excel, to cloud sources, to Twitter feeds, to JSON feeds, the APIs, the IoT, you name it, FME can connect to it. So if you're trying to get your data into your data warehouse rapidly, FME provides off-the-shelf connectors so that you can get that information through a low-code or no-code solution. It also provides the ability to stream data in real time. Now, this morning, we're not going to go through any transformations because we're going to show you how quickly it is to extract and load data. But the good thing with FME is it does have the ability then to transform the data, and also either to transform the data as part of the ETL, or when you're using something like a cloud data warehouse, that we can transform at the data warehouse level itself and take advantage of the scale and the processing capabilities of these cloud data warehouses. And again, Gavin's going to touch a bit on that this morning as he shows you in the demonstration. Finally, as we mentioned, you need these processes to be automated. they need to be able to run without manual intervention. So with FME, the automation capabilities now have really come on the last couple of years. So now you can have automated data integration using event-based workflows. You can build these automations using a very simple, again, no-code approach with the visual interface, and you can eliminate that manual effort of complex and repetitive tasks. All of this done with using integrated authentication, integrated security, so that you're ensuring the governance of your data, that you're ensuring that no data is exposed or let be risk to be taken, to be breached. So with that, I'm going to flick here and bring up Gavin's demonstration. There we go. And Gavin, I'll hand over to you, and you can prompt me as I go.
Cool, thank you. As I say, we've just got a few demonstrations to show some of the ways we can move the data very, very simply with FME. We're starting off with a fairly simple example. It's also one that, probably for those of you who are familiar with FME, you probably would be a little bit surprised in some of the choice for the tools we're using. We're actually going to use the quick translator for this one. So for those of you who are a bit more familiar with FME, it's that product we always kind of just forget about and put to one side. But actually we forget just how powerful it can be for very, very simple transformations. So when we just need to move data, we don't need to build a whole workspace or anything complex to do it. We can literally just say, well, we need to pick this data source up. We need to move it over here. We can just run through that process. And we can repeat that process as well. So it's a very repeatable process when we come in. So I just get you to jump into the next slide for me. Thank you. So what we're going to do here is just start up the quick translator. You can see it's very, very simple. We're just going to build a really simple translation that takes some data from our on-premise database and then moves it up to the cloud warehouse. So what we found was a couple of customers looking at trying to identify bus stop location for the elderly. So they can say, well, if we want to go to this particular location, what bus stop do we need? But their on-prem systems were too slow. So here we're going to connect to an on-premise SQL server. We're going to find the tables that we actually need. In this case, it's just the National Transport Agency's tables for the transport data set. And we're going to load this up to our data warehouse in the cloud. I've got all of my different connections, my different instances up there. And literally that's it. I can just click go and it's going to load that data set for me. So I can move a lot of tables with actually quite a lot of records in, or a reasonable number of records. There's about 6 or 7 million rows, I think, being shifted here. Obviously, because it's a cloud warehouse, there's a little bit of bandwidth. So this is going to depend on how fast your upload bandwidth is. My upload bandwidth from home is not fantastic, so it's a little bit slower. But obviously, if you've got fast bandwidth, that's going to move up a lot quicker. If your system's already in the cloud, cloud to cloud transfer this way, again, is going to be very, very quick. Volume of data here, we'll jump across shortly. And I'm going to just skip forward a little bit. So you can see there, it took about 20 minutes with my bandwidth. My downlink's very, very good. My uplink is not great. But once we've uploaded that data, that's now available to us in the cloud. So we didn't have to do anything clever. I've literally just lifted that data and then put that data up. And then we can come in our cloud warehouse and we can actually do some of that transformation that we might have done traditionally in FME or in some of the processes previously, actually in the data warehouse. And the reason for doing that is it's much, much quicker. When we're looking at that kind of volume of rows, it's much faster to do it here than it would have been to transform it and then upload that data as we go. So you can just see here, we've got different bus routes coming through, some of the different agencies. One of the nice things with this, we can actually create some workbooks. So I can actually pre-can all my SQL because I'm terrible at remembering it all on a good day. But here I can just run a quick query. I can then quickly see all of that data that we're bringing back as part of that workflow for a particular route. So this is the expressway bus routes. But I can also then go and create a table. So rather than creating it all in FME, processing that, trying to do all my joins in the workflow, I've lifted that data up, I've moved it up, and now I can quickly actually do that all in my cloud data warehouse. It takes about 4 seconds to do that here, to create that table. Very, very quick. That's without caching or anything. On the on-premise systems, that was taking nearly 2 minutes to do the same thing. So we're seeing a huge jump. And obviously this is on a relatively small number of records. It's about 5 million rows. So it's a reasonable number, but it's not huge for modern data standard. So if we were doing this with tens of millions or hundreds of millions of rows, like Kieran's saying, you're going to start to see that time frame really exponentially scale out. So you can see here we've got that 5.1 million rows. We've generated that table in seconds. That's much quicker to be able to build those processes. And the reason we've kind of gone through a little bit of the SQL here is because we can actually obviously bring some of that logic back into FME, as we'll see shortly. So we can actually reuse that logic within our data pipeline as well. So we don't even have to do any of that manually. We can actually run through and create a lot of these applications very simply, and actually just have it all orchestrated as part of our process. So if I get you just to jump on one more slide, here you go. So this is taking those same sort of pipelines, but saying, well, actually, we don't really want to do that manually. We want to automate all of this. So I can come in from a SharePoint, for example, have a web-based application that I can come in. I can now click on my link. And then here we can see we've got our different data connections. So I can come in, I can choose the different system I want. So it might be our production system. It could be an on-premise system. And again, which cloud do I want to put it in? Where do I want to send it? And what tables do I want to copy over? So again, I can just build this as a simple web application, come in, choose my different connections, choose the tables I want to run. And again, I can just click on OK, and that's going to push that data up for me into my cloud environment again. So, not having to worry about loading anything, what software, any installs or anything like that, all of that pipeline's taken care of, and users can just come in and say, we can get that from a SharePoint link. So you can set up, tell somebody to go to SharePoint, they can just run that particular process, and then they can come in and they can see all of that data that's available. So it just really starts to simplify a lot of these movements. And obviously we can schedule these things as well in the background to run them. But a lot of times you do want users to have some agency in the process. They may need to choose different systems. It may be something they only run for analytics occasionally, so they just want to pull that data down. It's not something you want that overhead of running every single day. It's going to be, actually, we need to do some processing. It's the end of year. We're coming up for a particular reporting point. Therefore, we need to pull some of this data into that warehouse. We can just go into one of those very simple web apps, click go, choose the sources, choose the data we need to move across, and obviously then push that straight up into our data warehouse. And obviously then we can go off and do all the nice fancy analytics within things like the Sisense environment as part of that process as well. If I just get to jump one more slide. So the next one is just kind of pulling a few more of these big things together. So this is looking at Twitter feeds. We took Dublin. I had to sneak a map in because I'm a geographer, so I got one in there. So we're looking at all of the tweets that basically reference Dublin. So this has come from Twitter, so it's a bit of a caution on what on earth anybody's going to tweet in here. But you can see we can build a simple data workflow. So this is a data pipeline. It's an automation in FME terminology. But again, we've built a listener, and this is pulling back all of the unstructured data. And the reason we're using Twitter here is because it's analogous to an IoT device. So a lot of IoT devices will have those sort of unstructured JSON messages coming back that we might want to store and process. So we can listen to Twitter, and essentially it gives us a JSON response back. And obviously then we actually want to then do something with that. So in this case, we're using a little bit of the streamer. So this is basically listening. It's the same as the IoT type streamers, any of the kind of high volume message streamers. And then we're writing those tweets into Snowflake. And then the second part of the workspace is actually doing some processing on it, because that raw JSON data doesn't go into Sisense, and it doesn't really go into any other downstream applications very easily. So actually what we want to do is extract the relevant information for that. So we've just got a bunch of queries that uses Snowflake. So all of this is being done on the cloud, all processed on the cloud, all leveraging that performance, but we're using FME to orchestrate the process. So FME is just helping us with the orchestration to actually run that data pipeline. So in this case, it's our unstructured data. We can just come in. We have a simple app again, clicks OK, and that's going to run that process, listen to all of that data, collect as much of that information as we need for our analytics. And then it's going to run that data cleansing process for us as well to pull out that relevant information. So we can start to see, all the useful bits of that data. And again, it's just going to create us a new table. So you can see here, this is the Twitter results that we've got. It's all just JSON. Useful. There's a whole host of information in there, but a lot of that's not relevant for what we need. It's not really going to be stuff we're going to do analytics on and things as part of it. It's somebody's user logo information. But we've also then been able to pull out from that using those kind of Snowflake queries triggered from the FME workflow. to actually pull out some of that relevant information. So if we have a look at that data preview, we've got the Twitter username, we've got its date created, we've got the source for where the Twitter's come from, we've got the kind of description, but we've also got things like the number of followers, friends count, favorites count. And if you think of that as being more IoT information, for example, that could be your temperature information, it could be status information coming through, it could be a whole host of different parameters that have been stored as that message. So it doesn't matter if we've got 10 different IoT devices all reporting in with different JSON structures. We can build the queries to parse that information out, pull that out into usable information that we can then start to run some analysis on, do a lot of that monitoring as parts of our process. So it gives us a really easy way to build these sort of data pipelines and actually make them very, very simple for users to use and interact with. So, we don't have to train somebody up on how to use the software, where all these data sources are. It can be very much click a few buttons and then run that process. We can put some automation in there as well. These ones have been very manually triggered, but we could run them as a schedule. So we can come through and we can trigger them as a scheduled process to run that. So maybe the listening is run as a manual, an automatic process, but we could then say, well, okay, now we want to do some of the analytics. We can get a user to come in and then start to trigger some of those workflows as part of that process. There's a whole raft of different things there, but it's really about making that process simple, but also making it quite repeatable so that you can come in every single time and get the same response. If you run the process, it's going to run the same steps. You're not letting somebody try and drag things in, maybe miss a field out as part of that process. It really simplifies just moving data around an organization. It doesn't always have to be the huge, great big workspaces and the huge, great big transformations as part of that. We can just move the data and then we can do a little bit of processing once we've got that data closer to where it's going to be used and actually make that relevant for the user at that particular point in time. And I say, if Kieran's got some shiny dashboards, he can then try and show you, and you can show that whole end-to-end kind of part of the process.
Yeah, I love to show a shiny dashboard. That's really good. And just before I go on to the dashboard, Gavin, the that piece with the Twitter, like if you had a published parameter, like you could see, say, in an emergency case or something, like if there was, the police wanted to, mine tweets about a certain topic, and they could run it and go, okay, let's drill into a topic. Like could be the rugby match, it could be if there was, a storm or whatever it was, you could be looking at that data. It could also be from a marketing point of view, a company maybe who's getting a bit of bad publicity could actually run the process over the last week, put in, let's say it's data builders, and let's see how we're being mentioned in Twitter, and then in your analytic then drill into that information. So that, sorry, go on.
So there's a huge market there for those sorts of things, because I think this is where, we've not really touched on it, but there's FME has the natural language processing that you can start to do that kind of, is it a positive suggestion, is it a negative suggestion? But also then when we start to talk about, the likes, everybody's talking about ChatGPT, where you're actually starting to run through and process and parse that information. So they've done some examples about pulling street names apart and making logical street names, but actually things like, if you have got an emergency response, can you start to parse it? If there's a big natural disaster, can you parse out some of that information? Or even for marketing, can you parse out that sensitivity as part of those processes? So there's an awful lot you can start to do with those sorts of things to enrich that data even further, off the back of that process.
And taking it from an unstructured or semi-structured piece into something structured, so then the analysts can actually use that information. So if I then go into my Sisense here, I can go into data. So I've just launched up my Sisense. It's probably just taking a second to remember I'm here. And I'm actually going to create what's called a live connection in Sisense. So I'm going to create a live connection. I'm going to call it data pipes. I can type webinar. That's my live model. And I'm going to hit go on that. And I'm going to add some data. So I'm going to add some data to the model. I'm going to pick Snowflake. And I make mistakes in my typing so people know it's not recorded. So I can then pick Snowflake. And now if I go into the FME database, we'll see the table that Gavin has just been talking about, which was Twitter data, Gavin, wasn't it? That's the process data.
That's the one.
Yeah, I can go bring that into my data model. So I've now got my data. I can click on that. I can do a preview to see the information. So you can see SciSense is now connecting directly to that live information. Because it's a live model, I can actually look at the statistics. So SciSense has some simple little tools which can tell us there straight away some analysis, semantic analysis of the sources, the descriptions, you know, deviations, who the followers, all this kind of very nice, quickly things, just straight away by being able to connect to that data. So that looks good. I'm going to publish that, and it's publish succeeded. So now I can actually create a dashboard. So off that data. So I'm going to create a new dashboard. It'll pick up my Snowflake connection, and I'm going to call it, yeah, Data Pipelines Webinar. And I'm now willing. So we've gone from, you see how quick Gavin could take the data from Twitter, mine that data, push it to Snowflake, do a bit of manipulation on it, to now I'm able to actually analyze the information. So I might look at the followers. So the I look at the tweets, and I look at the number of tweets that we've actually mined in that. Oh no, sorry, I need to figure that better. So if I do the rows and change it to, sorry, delete that for a second, add, and I am going to do, so I pick the tweets, and so I'm going to pick the Twitter user, and I'm going to add but I'm going to filter it, and I'm going to go and say I want the Twitter user with the most records. So I'll go to my little column here, and I'll go top, and I'm going to rank it by the number of followers. So I'm going to have the Twitter's top 20 users, and I'll see the biggest users that we're talking about data for Gavin were Belfast Telegraph values. So now I can add some data to that. So I can look at the Twitter tweet source. So I can see what the source was from. I'll add another column here, and I'll use a favorites count. So we can then see that our biggest users on that data was the Twitter users, were Belfast Telegraph, Business Post. We can see their number of accounts. We can see the data. This has all been mined straight from what Gavin has created. And I can then, so that's change the title on that dashboard. So I can change that to being top tweets with followers, top Twitter's tweets by follower. So that's my first dashboard. I can then create another widget. So at this time, I'll take the data. This time I look at the total number of favorites. So that's the total sum of total favorites. I can create a widget. So these guys have number of favorites. I can move that up there. Sorry, just bring that one down there. And we have it beside it. I can add another digit, another point. So this time I can go all tweets again, and I can go into my advanced configuration, and I can add values, but this time I'm going to base it on their friends, so number of friends. So I'll see the friends, and again I'm going to filter here by the top ranked by friends. So friends count, like that. And I'm now seeing the tweets by the guys with the most friends counts, and I can add in their Twitter username as well in there onto the chart. And I could even switch that from being a pivot chart to being a bar chart. So now I can actually see the tweets and start seeing some information. Terrible looking chart, but it'll proves how quickly we can actually bring in the data and start pulling in some information and creating our widgets from that raw data. The other thing we can actually do is we can use a blocks control. So we can do some coding. I'll use the simple blocks, so I can go into advanced config, and I can switch this to being a blocks widget. and I'm going to use a different template here. So we had a webinar recently on blocks and controls. So what I want to be able to do here is take the Twitter user and take the number of followers. Okay, so I'm now going to change this little control down here that the panel is not going to use name, it's going to use, sorry, let me rename this, Twitter user, put that in there, and I'm going to use number of followers. So rename that, and I can put that in there. And if I had the picture of the person who was tweeting, if we had that information, we could change the picture as well. But now what we can actually see is if I apply that, we can now pin through in our blocks control each user and the amount of followers they have. So we've taken that completely unstructured data that Gavin had mined it off Twitter, brought it into a database, and then we're able to, in a couple of clicks, analyze that information inside the dashboard and build some very nice little widgets and controls in minutes. So it's really showing you that that time to insight is really, really quick. And we're not spending time doing data wrangling, and how quick it is then to create these kind of dashboards and analysis really, really quickly, so that we're able to actually see what we're doing. So just to bring things back then, to start wrapping things up, with FME, it's really, really flexible ability to, when you're creating these data pipelines, it can work self-hosted. You can install directly on your own hardware, on your cloud or virtual machine. FME Cloud is also provided to provide a hosted version for you. And also now FME is also available on the cloud marketplace, so that you can create FME in just a few clicks. So again, it is about, we can access your data wherever it is. You can set these systems up, these data pipelines up very quickly and very easily. When you do this rapid data load into your data warehouse and you're able to get your initial dashboards, the first thing you'll start seeing, like you kind of seen there with my data, is some data quality issues. So how do you improve that data quality? Because once you get the data in, you haven't done a big transformation process. You want to be able to do improved data quality. You want to be able to make the data better for analysis, do some data preparation or data stewardship. With that, you can actually use FME to do those workflows. And if you come back next month, Gavin and I will be actually going a bit more deeper on how we can use FME to do data quality and improve your data. Also, we talked about data democratization at the start of the presentation. Once you get your information to the data warehouse, you want to be able to share it. So being able to set up APIs to share that data is another area that you can do. And again, FME, very good at building that kind of enterprise service bus, so that APIs out to share the information. And you saw there this morning with SciSense how easy it is to create dashboards. Real value when it comes to SciSense is when you can embed it or integrate that data into things like other applications, so that you can use the analysis where you need it and not have these separate systems that aren't integrated. SciSense is really good at being embedded, white labeled, and integrated into applications. And again, last month's webinar 2 months ago, last month I think it was, we showed you a SciSense and how easy it is to embed and integrate SciSense into your applications. As I said, upcoming webinars, we have a data quality webinar on the 8th of March. So Gavin and myself will be back talking about how we can improve your data quality. Once you have your data in your source, how that can be improved. Then in April, myself and Connor will be talking about the latest release highlights from SciSense from last year and what's come out of the Q1 release this year. And then Connor and I will be back then later in May to actually do a bit more work on this kind of big data and loading data at scale into things like Snowflake and other sources like that. You can keep up to date on our webinars on our Data Builders page, which is databuilders.ie, which is the upcoming webinars there. And I think we're sticking nicely to time. I think there's one question there in the chat. Oh, somebody asking for the recording. Yeah, that's
I just confirmed that for them there. We'll send it out before the end of the week, so everyone that's registered will get the recording sent to their inbox.
No problem. And that's all the questions, Tanya. Is there any other questions or?
No, that's all that's come in so far. It was a great presentation, by the way, and I think the content is fairly self-explanatory. I suppose give people a minute or two if there's anything else. Feel free to ask. Doesn't seem to be any. All very attentive anyway. With great attendance on the call. No, I think that's it for questions.
Okay. Gavin, anything else more to add? Are you happy?
No, I was going to say, and I say it's probably, if we'd have remembered, we could have put those user profile pictures in for your demo as well. So that's definitely in the data. So it's an easy one to add in for next time.
We've just had one question there actually. Any plans on adding spatial component?
Yeah, well, today because we always focus on the spatial with FME, we didn't do any spatial stuff today. Gavin snuck in a map at one stage, but yes, like everything we're showing today works with spatial formats, and yeah, Gavin, I suppose you're the spatial expert. What would you add to that?
I was going to say, I think we would have the Snowflake database, and that part of that process was actually spatial. So looking at generating the roots out of it. So from those data, we'd have just extended that process, or we are extending that process to create the roots out of it. So we'd actually have those for the mapping components to go into there. So you could show where the bus stop location was, for example, on a map. And again, you'd be able to pull that into Sisense. So all of that data, when it's spatially enabled, we can plot that on the mapping components. It's all there. It's just not what we focused on for this particular webinar, but there's a huge raft of capability across all of those products to actually deliver the sort of geospatial component and bring in, the geography into the whole of the thing. Because a lot of the time might not be a map, but you are interested in that sort of geographical component about where things are and things. So that's definitely well supported.
Okay, yeah, definitely, and everything we showed today, like we could have been using a spatial format as the source or the destination. Like that could have been a similar process we would Snowflake. It could be writing the ArcGIS online. It could be reading as shape files or map info files or whatever. Like that's the big thing with FME. It's it is the market leader when it comes to spatial. Okay, well I think that's all the questions. I think we've covered everything. Thanks everybody for attending. It was great attendance this morning. Yeah, I hope everybody has a nice day. Gavin, and thanks Tanya for arranging everything, and Gavin for all the hard work putting the demo together. So hopefully we'll see you next month. Hope you can come back and see our next webinar, and thank you for coming.
Everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Yep.